Coming up on 9:32, 28 in front of 10. And I welcome to the program this morning Gail Harris. Gail from Massachusetts, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, Gail. We do appreciate it. Gail, why don't you, before we get started, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about yourself? You obviously have a lot of credits, a couple of books to your credit, and what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, it's a very open-ended question. I'm an author and I'm a mother, and I would say that I'm a teacher and perpetual student of learning how to trust and follow my intuition and understand what that means. And I really came to that through not trusting myself. I guess for a long period in my life, I really, I was one of these type of people that I always heard my intuition, that inner voice that comes in and guides us in our life. I always heard it, but I never trusted it, which meant that I wasn't really trusting myself. And that's a painful way to live. I doubted myself a lot and found that I was living below my full potential. But my intuition was there, and I heard it. It was always guiding me to believe in myself and trust myself, and I finally started listening. And as a result, I came to know myself a lot better and find a way to live. And through trusting my intuition, I really came to see that part of my purpose in life is to talk about my intuition, and it's what led me here today. So that's kind of a detailed answer to your question.
Very, very helpful, though, because, again, you answered some of the questions, and that is, what's the opposite of following your intuition, and that. Now, let me just ask, because in a specific situation, someone is facing a decision. Let's say they know their job is going to end, all right? Mm-hmm. So they're facing decisions. They're obviously applying for jobs, but there are other options that are open. Maybe going back to school for a little while, or changing careers. Maybe a change in location. Maybe they have to move and relocate. So people, how do you bring intuition into that kind of a life decision?
It's such a perfect question because it's so real, and I think all of us have our own version of that question. It's life coming up, and so how we bring our intuition into it is, really the first thing, Mike, is we have to be able to hear it, because it often gets drowned out by all the external things that are going on in our life. And there are so many different ways I can really answer this question, but really, I guess I feel, or my intuition is actually guiding me to talk about, well, what actually is it? I'm saying that I couldn't follow it, and then I did follow it, and you're saying, well, how do we bring it into our life? But what is it? What is our intuition? And, I could give you my best definition of it, but it's an inner knowing. It's that still small voice that guides us in all areas of our life, and it guides us toward personal fulfillment. It's not about, there's a difference between our intellect and our intuition. And so how we bring it into our lives is to first be able to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
It has very distinct characteristics that distinguish it from our thoughts and our feelings. And we have to come to recognize it, let it in, and trust it. And that's a mouthful. It's not easy. We have to really make it a way of life.
So why do you think so many people ignore what their hearts are telling them?
Oh, well, that's actually not rocket science, Mike. It's, first of all, either we don't hear our intuition, we don't trust it. Trust is a very big piece of it. Or we just don't want to follow it. Our intuition tells us our truth. And as you know, sometimes the truth isn't always we don't want to hear it. We'd rather ignore it and go do what we want. And so it really comes down to, in my opinion, what I've learned from my intuition. It's a very personal relationship. We all learn different things. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned in my life is that our intuition helps us to determine the difference between what we want and what we need. It's simple, maybe simple, but it isn't always easy. And I love quoting Mick Jagger, because if intuition had a soundbite, what it would be is, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. It's the bottom line, in my experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's then talk about, what are some of the steps that people can take to learn to trust their gut instincts?
Well, the first thing you need to do is get quiet. You have to, as I said, you have to learn how to hear it, make it a number one priority. I mean, I can give you a couple of quick pointers, but so the first thing, it's really important to quiet the mind, put other things aside for a moment, go to a quiet place, take a walk. If you're in your office and you can't do that, of course, just close your eyes. The idea is to eliminate any distractions, take a couple of deep breaths, and set your intention to hear it. You have to set your intention, but you can't force it. You can't force it and push it. Trust is a very big piece of this work. Trust is, it's this still small voice that guides us. There's no proof other than the proof of what we've had from in the past, all the times that we've trusted it and listened to it and things worked out. So you can't push it or force it. You just have to be patient and then see what happens. Ask it a question, like you were saying before, the situation with your job. What should I do? Is now the time to pick up the family and leave? Should I go out on my own? So set that intention, and you'll get your answer.
Now, because it's interesting, you're talking about getting still and listening to that inner, and yet the reality of it is our lives have become more and more filled with distractions and sounds and busyness.
Exactly, that's why this is the number one thing, is that you have to make this a priority in your life. Otherwise, forget it. It's doomed before you take the vow, because there are, like you said, we could find a million distractions. So you have to really understand, what is the benefit? Why should I put all this practice? Because it is practice. I really liken it to taking up a sport or an art or a craft. You're not going to sit down at the piano and all of a sudden, play a concerto because you practiced one time or because you want to play the concerto. It really, you have to make it a practice. That really is one of the books that I've written. It's a self-help that teaches you how to trust your intuition, teaches you how to listen for it and then to trust it and follow it. And it takes practice. Like anything, it takes work, and you have to be committed to it.
Okay, so you mentioned your books, which is a perfect lead-in. Your latest one is Finding Zoe, a Deaf Woman's Story of Identity, Love, and Adoption. That was co-authored with Brandy Raris, right?
Yes. And so this is a different twist on intuition. Like the first one is a self-help, and the second one is actually Brandy Raris is my co-author's memoir. She is a former Miss Deaf America. She was born hearing, and the story is about how through it's like a life example of how she followed her own intuition to find self-acceptance as a deaf person, and also to finding her daughter Zoe, who she adopted. And through that story, the book takes a look at issues that we can all relate to, such as finding our place in the world and fitting in, being judged and judging others and judging ourselves, and then through trust, trusting that inner voice, which means that we're trusting ourselves, moving past all those doubts and fears so that we can fulfill our dreams in life. And in this particular story, Zoe, Brandy's daughter, was relinquished by 4 other parents by the time she was 8 months old, and Brandy and her husband adopted her. And this little girl, she so easily could have ended up in the foster care system, but no, she actually ended up in the perfect home for her. So I tell the story through this particular lens where I show how everything had to happen exactly as it did in just the right time for Zoe to find the perfect home. It really gives an example of how what seems horrible up close is beautiful from a distance. And I truly try to practice that in my own life, and I wrote the story through that lens to give people, to sort of give an example of looking at our own lives in this way, without judgment and blame, but through that lens of trust. It can really change our whole experience of life, and I just offer that up.
Yeah, it's great. Your other book is called Your Heart Knows the Answer, and Gail, we're running out of time, but you have a website, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's GailHarrisAuthor.com, and I just want to also add that on there I have my White Bread Wisdom blog that's right on there, which is really short clips about parenting, self-love, and intuition, and how they're all related, which is the juicy stuff.
Good. And it is Gail, Gail. That's how you spell Gail. So,
Correct.
Gail, thank you so much for your time this morning. We are out of time. I am going to tell our listeners that I'm going to put this information up on our website a little later on today, so they can go to WRNJ.com here. And if you've already got that bookmarked, you'll find it up there a little later on, and you can see how to get in touch with Gail and find out more about her books. Okay? Gail, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.